Every world hides its secrets, and some beings belong to more than one. I am born of two worlds where science meets spirituality and reality collides with imagination. Welcome to the space between worlds. The wind screamed through the ruins of the old city, carrying the sound of metal clashing far away. The war between humans and the alien Varkari had lasted for 5 long years. Earth was burning. Cities had fallen. Hope was dying. But tonight, hope had one last call left. Inside a ruined control center under the mountains of Nevada, Captain Daniel Cross stared at the broken screens in front of him. The room was dark except for the blinking red light of the emergency signal. His uniform was torn, his face covered in dust and blood. Yet his eyes still carried the same fire, the fire of a man who refused to kneel. "Power cells at 10%, said a robotic voice from the console. "Communication link unstable." Daniel's hand shook slightly as he reached for the transmitter. He knew what it meant. This would be their last message to anyone left alive out there. He pressed the button. "This is Captain Cross of the Human Resistance," he said, his voice rough but steady. "If anyone can hear this, anyone, the Varkari are preparing their final attack. They will wipe out what's left of humanity by dawn. We need reinforcements. We need hope." Static answered him. He looked down, sighing. Around him, the few remaining soldiers of his team watched in silence. Some were wounded. Some were barely standing. And yet, not one of them spoke of surrender. Then suddenly a faint voice came through the static. "This is Outpost Epsilon. Reading you, Captain. Barely, but we hear you." Daniel's eyes widened. He leaned closer. "Epsilon, you're still operational." "Not for long," said the voice. "We're under siege, but we captured something, someone, an alien commander." The room fell silent. "Repeat that," Daniel said. "We captured a Varkari general, female. Calls herself Zyra of the 13th Legion. She says she wants to speak." "To you?" Daniel froze. His soldiers exchanged looks of disbelief. No alien ever wanted to talk. The Varkari only killed, only conquered, and yet curiosity stirred inside him. Maybe, just maybe, there was a reason. "Patch her through," Daniel said. The radio crackled again. For a moment only silence. Then a voice deep, fierce, and cold as steel. "Human," she said. "You speak like a leader. Do you command what's left of your kind?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "Who is this?" "I am Zyra," she said. "General of the 13th Legion of the Varkari Empire. You will release me at once, or I will burn this planet myself." Daniel almost laughed. "You're in no position to make threats." "You misunderstand," Zyra said. "Even in chains, my army hears my call. If I do not return by dawn, they will unleash fire from the skies. Your world will be ash." The soldiers in the room murmured in fear. Daniel didn't move. He looked at the blinking signal light, the same one that had been warning them for hours. Maybe she was telling the truth. But then a strange calm filled him. "Then we both have something to lose," he said softly. "So talk, General. Why contact me?" A pause. "Because," she said slowly, "you are not like the others. I saw your face in the Battle of Titan Ridge. You did not run." Daniel frowned. That battle had been a massacre. He was the only survivor. "You watched me," he said. "I remembered your defiance," she replied. "The way you fought, no human has ever looked at me without fear. Until you." Daniel's men exchanged confused glances. Was she trying to play some kind of mind game to trick them? "What do you want, Zyra?" Daniel asked. "To offer a chance," she said. "Your world cannot win this war, but there is something worse coming, a force even my empire cannot face. Let me go and I will help you survive what follows." Daniel didn't answer. His eyes narrowed. He had heard lies before, promises made by desperate enemies, but something in her voice, it didn't sound like fear. It sounded like truth. The radio crackled again, then silence. The signal had died. "Transmission lost," said the robotic voice. Daniel stared at the dead screen for a long time. His men waited for orders. "Sir," one of them asked. "What do we do?" Daniel turned away slowly. "We find that outpost," he said, "and we meet this Zyra face to face." Outside, thunder rolled. The alien ships were gathering in the sky like black clouds. The final storm was coming, but Daniel Cross didn't kneel, he smiled. And in that smile, cold, quiet, and fearless, was the spark that would change the fate of two worlds. The desert stretched endlessly beneath a blood-red sky. The last rays of sunlight glinted off the burnt wreckage of alien ships scattered across the sands. The air smelled of smoke and iron. A convoy of armored trucks crawled through the wasteland. Inside the lead vehicle, Captain Daniel Cross sat in silence, watching the horizon. Every bump in the road made the metal of his rifle clatter softly. His eyes were sharp, tired, but unbroken. They were heading toward Outpost Epsilon, the place where the alien general was held, the woman or creature named Zyra. No one in the resistance trusted her. No one except Daniel thought she might have a reason to call him. The radio crackled again. "Captain, we're 2 miles out. Radiation levels stable, but there's something strange on the scanners." Daniel raised an eyebrow, defined strange. Energy readings, not human, not Varkari either. Daniel's hand tightened around his rifle. "Keep moving," he ordered. "Whatever it is, we'll face it when we get there." Outpost Epsilon appeared like a dying skeleton in the sand. Broken towers, rusted fences, the human flag half buried and torn. As the truck stopped, soldiers jumped out, weapons ready. Daniel stepped down and looked around. Every shadow seemed to move, then he saw it. The bunker door, thick steel, sealed with alien runes glowing faintly blue. Inside that bunker she was waiting. 2 guards led him in. The corridor was cold, lit by flickering white lights. The hum of generators echoed through the walls. At the end of the hallway, a reinforced glass chamber glowed faintly. Inside stood Zyra, the alien general. She was tall, armored in silver and gold plates shaped like living metal. Her eyes burned like molten fire. Even in captivity, she looked like a queen among warriors. Chains of glowing energy bound her wrists, yet she stood straight, proud, defiant. When Daniel entered, gaze snapped to him. The room seemed to grow smaller. "Human," she said. Her voice was calm, but there was danger beneath it like a blade under silk. "You came." Daniel stopped a few feet from the glass. "You asked for me, I'm listening." Zyra tilted her head. "You do not kneel. I don't kneel for anyone." For a heartbeat she almost smiled. "So I see." Daniel crossed his arms. "You said something worse is coming, something even your empire fears. Start talking." Zyra's eyes glowed brighter. "You wouldn't believe me if I did. Try me." She stepped closer to the glass. "We call it the Devourer. It comes from beyond the stars. It consumes worlds not for conquest, but for hunger. It has already taken 3 of our colonies. Your planet will be next." Daniel frowned. "And I'm supposed to take the word of a Varkari general who's been trying to burn my species off the map." Her expression didn't change. "Leave what you wish. But when the skies turn black and your oceans boil, you'll remember this warning." The room fell silent. Daniel stared at her, the fire in her eyes, the strange mix of strength and sorrow in her face. He wanted to hate her. He wanted to see just another monster, but something about her words, about her tone, felt too real. "Why tell me?" he asked finally. "Why help us?" Zyra's gaze softened just for a moment. "Because you remind me of us, before we forgot what mercy meant." Daniel blinked. "What is that even?" A sudden explosion shook the entire bunker. The lights flickered, alarms screamed. "Sir," a soldier shouted over the radio. "Alien forces inbound, they found us." Daniel drew his rifle. "Defensive positions, protect the prisoner." The soldier's voice broke. "Sir, they're not Varkari, they're—" The signal cut off in static. Daniel looked back at Zyra. Her expression was cold and sharp now, no trace of softness. "They're here," she whispered, "the Devourer's scouts." The walls trembled again. From above came a screech, not mechanical, not human, but something alive and wrong. Daniel turned toward the exit. "You're staying here. If you leave me chained, you'll all die," Zyra said, voice rising. "Release me and I'll fight beside you." He hesitated. The soldier in him screamed no. The man who wanted to believe hesitated. Another explosion tore through the outpost. Dust and fire filled the air. Zyra stepped forward, eyes burning like suns. "Decide, human, your world ends tonight or it begins again with me." Daniel stared at her, then at the collapsing ceiling. And for the first time in 5 years of war, he made a choice that wasn't in the manual. He shot the control panel. The glass shattered. The chains fell. Zyra stepped out of the smoke, free wings of silver light unfurling behind her. Daniel raised his weapon. "You better be worth this." Zyra grinned, fierce and wild. "You'll see soon enough." Outside, the sky split open and the real enemy arrived. The night sky tore apart. A burning streak of red light sliced through the clouds, crashing into the desert just a few miles from Outpost Epsilon. The shockwave hit seconds later, shaking the ground like thunder. Dust filled the air. Every soldier ducked, covering their heads. Captain Daniel Cross stood in the middle of the chaos, rifle raised, his ears ringing. Through the noise, he heard something, not explosions, but a sound like 1,000 voices whispering at once. "Contact!" A soldier shouted. "Something's moving in the smoke." Daniel turned and froze. From the crater, shapes began to crawl out. They weren't machines. They weren't Varkari either. Their bodies shimmered like liquid metal, changing form every second, half shadow, half flesh. Dozens of them. Hundreds, their eyes glowed with a faint blue hunger. "The Devourer," Zyra whispered beside him. Her chains were gone, her armor shining again, her blade humming with strange energy. "They've come sooner than I thought." Daniel didn't look at her. "Then let's make them regret it." The creatures screamed, a sound that made the air vibrate, and charged. Daniel fired first. His rifle roared, sending bursts of plasma into the nearest beasts. Some exploded into black mist. Others kept coming, limbs twisting into blades. Zyra moved faster than human eyes could follow. Her staff spun in her hands, striking with flashes of blue fire. Every hit tore through the creatures like lightning. Daniel's soldiers fought hard, but they were outnumbered. The ground was littered with spent shells and fallen men. "Fall back to the inner gate," Daniel shouted. "Hold the line." He turned. Zyra was still fighting, surrounded, her armor cracked, her hair burning with golden light. "Zyra," he yelled. She didn't answer. One of the creatures leapt at her, claws outstretched. Daniel ran, dove forward, and fired point blank. The beast dissolved into smoke. Zyra looked at him, breathing hard. "You saved me." "Don't make it a habit," Daniel said. For a second, in the middle of the battle, their eyes met, a human and an alien general, fighting not for victory but for survival. Then the ground shook again. From the crater rose something massive, a giant creature made of black light and bone, taller than a tower, its face a mask of shifting shadows. Every step it took melted the sand beneath it. Zyra's expression hardened. "A harbinger," Daniel frowned. "That a fancy word for we're dead." "Worse," she said, "it calls the swarm." The monster opened its mouth not to roar but to sing. A terrible, low hum spread across the desert. All around, the smaller creatures froze, their bodies pulsing with blue light. Then they began to merge, fusing into larger, stronger forms. Daniel's jaw tightened. "We can't hold this position." Zyra turned to him, her armor flickering with light. "There's a way, the outpost reactor. It has a core that can vaporize everything within a mile, but it will kill us too." Daniel smirked. "Not much of a plan. It's the only one," she said quietly. He thought for a moment, then nodded. "Then we buy time. You set the charge." Zyra blinked, surprised. "You trust me that much?" Daniel reloaded his rifle. "No, but I trust that you hate these things more than you hate me." For the first time, Zyra smiled, a real, sharp smile. "You learn quickly, human. They fought their way back through the ruins. Every corner was fire and shadow. The screams of the dying echoed like ghosts. Inside the control room, sparks rained from the ceiling. Zyra tore open the reactor casing, glowing symbols flashing across her armor. 5 minutes, she said. "Then we run." Daniel turned to the window. The harbinger was coming closer now, each step shaking the walls. His soldiers were still out there fighting to hold the line. He lifted his comm. All units, this is Cross, fall back. You did good, you did human. Static, then silence. The door burst open. A creature lunged. Daniel shot it down, chest heaving. Time's up, Zyra said. They ran through the burning corridors. The base trembled. Daniel looked back. The harbinger was almost upon them. Now Zyra, he shouted. She slammed her hand on the detonator. A flash of white filled the world. Silence. When the smoke cleared, half the desert was gone. The Devourer's army had been erased. Daniel lay in the sand, bleeding but alive. Zyra stood beside him, her armor broken, her blade gone. He looked at her and laughed weakly. Guess it worked. Zyra nodded. For now, she looked at the horizon. But this was only the first wave. The Devourer doesn't stop. Daniel sat up slowly. Then neither do we. Zyra turned her eyes to him, a strange, almost human warmth in them. Perhaps your species deserves more than I thought. Daniel smiled even through the pain. Told you, we don't kneel. And far above them in the black sky, something vast moved, a shadow larger than the moon. The next battle was already on its way. The desert was quiet again, too quiet. Smoke rose like dark fingers toward the stars. The sand still glowed faintly from the reactor blast. All around lay the broken remains of Outpost Epsilon, half buried, half burning. Captain Daniel Cross sat on a rock, staring at the horizon. His hands trembled from exhaustion, but his eyes were alert. The silence after battle always felt louder than war itself. Zyra stood nearby, gazing at the stars. Her armor was shattered, one shoulder guard missing. Yet even in ruin, she looked powerful, dangerous, alive. The blue light in her veins pulsed softly, fading with every second. How long do we have? Daniel asked quietly. Zyra didn't turn. Before the next wave, maybe a day, maybe less. Daniel sighed. Great, just enough time to fix absolutely nothing. Zyra glanced at him, amused. You humans always joke when facing death. It's how we stay sane, Daniel said. She studied him for a moment, this soldier with dirt on his face and blood on his hands, yet still capable of humor. Strange creatures, these humans. A crackle came from the radio on Daniel's belt. Captain Cross, do you read? This is Command Unit 12. We picked up your beacon. Daniel grabbed the device. Command, you're alive. Barely. We're regrouping near the ruins of New Phoenix. We thought everyone at Epsilon was dead. Not everyone, Daniel said, looking at Zyra. I've got a guessed. There was a long pause. You mean one of them, sir? That's not open for debate, Daniel interrupted. She saved my life, and right now she's the only one who knows what's coming. Another pause. Understood. Rendezvous coordinates transmitting now. Daniel clicked off the radio and looked at Zyra. You coming? Zyra tilted her head. You're not afraid I'll kill you once we reach your people? He shrugged. If you wanted me dead, I'd already be ash. Zyra almost smiled. You might be smarter than you look. They traveled through the desert on a stolen Varkari hovercraft, a silver machine that hummed quietly over the sand. The night wind was cold, the stars endless above them. For hours neither spoke. Then Daniel finally asked, you said something before that the Devourer destroyed your colonies. What happened? Zyra's eyes darkened. It began at the edge of our empire, a world named Karin 6. We thought it was a natural storm until it ate the entire planet. No matter how many ships we sent, nothing came back, only silence. Daniel frowned. And you kept fighting humans while that thing was out there. Zyra looked at him. War is what we understand, peace is harder. Daniel nodded slowly. Yeah, we're not so different. Zyra's expression softened just a flicker, then she looked away. Perhaps that's the problem. By dawn, they reached the outskirts of New Phoenix, the last stronghold of humanity. What was once a shining city was now a fortress built from ruins. Towers patched with metal plates, energy shields flickering like dying candles. As they approached, alarms sounded. Soldiers appeared on the walls, weapons aimed. Hold your fire, Daniel shouted, raising his hand. She's with me. General Reeves, an older man with a scar across his face, stepped forward. "With you, you've lost your damn mind, Cross." "She's the reason we're alive," Daniel said, "and she's the only one who knows how to stop what's coming." Zyra stood tall, unflinching under dozens of rifles. "If I wished your deaths, you'd already be gone," she said calmly. Reeves scowled. "You expect me to trust her?" Daniel's voice hardened. "You don't have to trust her, trust me." The silence was heavy. Finally, Reeves nodded once. "You've got one chance, Captain. If she tries anything." "She won't," Daniel said. Zyra said nothing, but her eyes glowed faintly, not with threat but something close to respect. Inside the command bunker, holographic maps flickered. Earth's defense grid was full of red, dead zones. Zyra studied the map. "You have little time. The Devourer's main vessel is entering orbit." Daniel's heart sank. "Already?" She nodded. "But there is a way. If we combine your reactor weapons with my ship's core, we can create a pulse strong enough to drive it back, at least for now." Reeves frowned. "That's suicide." "Only if done wrong," Zyra replied coldly. Daniel looked between them. "Then we do it right." That night, under the dim lights of the bunker, Daniel stood alone for a moment, watching the sky through a cracked window. He could see the faint shadow above the clouds, something massive moving, blocking the stars. He heard footsteps behind him. "Zyra, you should rest," she said. "I don't think anyone sleeps easy before the end of the world," he replied. She looked up at the sky too. "Your people fight even when the universe itself turns against you. I almost envy that." Daniel smiled faintly. "You could learn it." Zyra turned to him. "Perhaps I am." For a second there was peace, two soldiers from different worlds, united by the same fear, the same fire. Then the ground trembled again. The shadow in the sky grew larger. Zyra's eyes narrowed. "It's begun." Daniel grabbed his weapon. "Then let's show them what humans and Varkari can do together." The sky was no longer blue. It burned red, black, and silver as something vast broke through the clouds. A ship so huge it looked like a mountain in the sky. Its surface rippled like liquid metal, alive, hungry. The Devourer had come. Every human eye in New Phoenix turned upward. Soldiers froze mid-step. Children stopped crying. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Then the sky screamed. Lightning burst across the clouds as the ship opened, not a door, but a wound, and thousands of smaller shapes poured out like a living storm. Daniel Cross stood on the command tower, staring at the horror above. "All units," he said into his radio, voice steady. "This is it. The end or the beginning. Hold your ground." Down in the hangar, Zyra was already in motion. Her damaged armor had been reforged with human metal, her alien core glowing through the cracks. Her ship, a Varkari Spear-class fighter, roared to life, surrounded by human pilots climbing into their old patched jets. Two worlds, one army, one chance. "Captain," a young pilot shouted over the noise. "We're not ready for this kind of battle." Daniel checked his weapon, calm despite the chaos. "We never are," he said. "That's why we win." He turned to Zyra, who stood beside her ship. "You sure this fusion pulse will work?" "It must," she said. "The Devourer feeds on energy. We'll give it more than it can swallow." Daniel smirked. "That's the kind of plan I like." Zyra stepped closer. Her eyes glowed faintly. "You are reckless, brave, foolish." "And you love it," Daniel said with a grin. For a moment she didn't answer. Then softly, "Perhaps I do." Before he could respond, the alarm sirens blared. "They're here," someone shouted. The first wave hit like a meteor shower. The Devourer's drones crashed into the shield, claws scraping, mouths splitting open to scream. "Open fire," Daniel shouted. The night exploded in light. Human cannons roared from the walls. Varkari energy lances cut through the dark. The ground trembled with the force of combined fire. Zyra's ship shot upward, wings of blue light spreading as she weaved through the swarm. Daniel watched from below, awe mixing with determination. She was poetry and death at once, every move perfect, every strike precise. "Target their cores." Zyra's voice echoed through the comms. "The light within their chests, destroy it." Copy that, Daniel replied, directing human fighters toward the glowing weak points. One by one, the Devourer's drones burst like stars. But for every one that fell, two more appeared. The air grew darker. The city shields flickered. Power levels dropping. Someone shouted. Daniel looked up. The main ship, the Devourer's vessel, was lowering itself slowly, like a god descending. From its underside came a beam of black light stretching down toward the earth. Everything it touched turned to ash. Zyra's voice cracked through the comms. "The pulse is ready, but we need a direct hit on the ship's heart." "Then we take it there," Daniel said. "All squadrons form on me." The human jets rose into the sky, small lights against a sea of darkness. Zyra flew beside Daniel's fighter, her silver ship cutting through the swarm like a blade. "You're insane, human," she said through the comm. "Not human," Daniel said, pulling up into a roll. "Resistance." They broke through the cloud layer, and there it was, the heart of the Devourer's ship, a glowing sphere the size of a city pulsing with energy. Inside it, Daniel could see faces, human faces, alien faces, all screaming silently, trapped in light. Zyra gasped. "It feeds on souls." Daniel's jaw clenched. "Then let's make it choke." He aimed his fighter straight at the sphere. "Daniel," Zyra shouted. "You can't, just trust me," he yelled. He fired everything: missiles, plasma, the last charge in his reactor. The blast tore open a wound in the ship's core. Now Zyra Dove, her ship glowing white-hot, the fusion pulse charging in her hands. She released it, a beam of blue and gold light, straight into the wound. For 1 second the world went silent. Then the sky burned brighter than the sun. The explosion was so vast it split the clouds apart. The Devourer's ship convulsed, twisting, its screams shaking the earth. The swarm froze, their bodies turning to dust midair. Daniel's jet was caught in the blast. Fire consumed his vision. "Daniel," Zyra's voice echoed in static. "Daniel, answer me." Nothing. Zyra's ship spiraled through the flames, searching. At last she saw him, his fighter, broken, falling through the clouds. She dove after him. The heat tore at her wings, but she didn't stop. She reached out, grabbed the cockpit, and pulled him free just before the wreck exploded. They fell together through fire and smoke until the desert caught them in a storm of dust. Hours later, when the dawn finally rose, the sky was clear again. The Devourer's ship was gone, shattered into drifting pieces glowing faintly like dying stars. Zyra sat beside Daniel's unconscious form, her armor blackened, her eyes dim. She looked up at the sunrise, the first peaceful one she'd seen in years. "Your world still stands," she whispered, "because you refused to kneel." She touched his hand and for the first time bowed her head. When Daniel Cross opened his eyes, the sky was gray. He felt cold sand under his palms. The wind whispered across the ruined desert, carrying the smell of smoke and iron. For a moment, he thought he was dead. Then pain crawled up his side, reminding him he was still alive. He sat up slowly. His vision blurred, but the sight before him was clear enough to hurt. The city of New Phoenix was gone. Only pieces remained: broken towers, twisted metal, a crater where the heart of the fortress had been. The ground was still warm, glowing faintly with the echo of the battle that had ended the Devourer's ship. Daniel coughed, dust spilling from his lips. "Zyra," he whispered. A shadow moved nearby. Zyra stepped out of the smoke. Her armor was shattered, one wing gone, her face streaked with black ash, but she was standing alive. "You don't die easily, human," she said softly. He managed a weak grin. "Neither do you." She walked closer and knelt beside him. Her eyes glowed faintly blue, dimmer than before, but still alive. "The Devourer is gone," she said. "Its heart broke. Its swarm turned to dust." Daniel looked around the silent wasteland. "We won, and still, look at this." Zyra followed his gaze. Victory always demands a price. They spent the next hours searching through the ruins. Survivors were few scattered soldiers, broken machines, a handful of civilians who had hidden deep underground. When the humans saw Zyra, their faces filled with fear. Some raised weapons. "She's one of them," a soldier shouted. She brought this here. Stand down, Daniel barked, stepping in front of her. She saved us. The soldier's voice shook with anger. We lost everything because of them. You call that saving? Daniel's eyes hardened. We're alive. That's more than we were yesterday. For a moment no one moved. Then slowly the soldiers lowered their guns, but the hate didn't leave their eyes. Zyra watched them quietly. Your people hate what they fear, she said later as they walked through the wreckage. Daniel nodded. And fear what they don't understand. You defend them, she said, even when they turn on you. He looked at her. That's what leaders do. She studied him for a moment, then nodded. Perhaps your kind deserves to live. As the sun set, they found a surviving bunker beneath the city. Inside, the air was cold and still. A few engineers and medics were gathered there, tending to the wounded. On a metal table lay a shattered piece of alien crystal glowing faintly with black light. What's that? Daniel asked. One of the engineers looked up. We found it near the crater. It's still alive somehow. Zyra stepped forward, eyes narrowing. That is a shard of the Devourer's core. It shouldn't exist. The crystal pulsed once softly like a heartbeat. Daniel frowned. If it shouldn't exist, why does it? Zyra's voice dropped to a whisper. Because something inside it refuses to die. Before anyone could react, the crystal flashed just for a second and a thin beam of light shot out, brushing across Daniel's arm. He felt a sting, sharp but quick. Zyra grabbed his wrist instantly. What did it do? I'm fine, Daniel said, shaking her off. It's just he stopped. A faint mark glowed on his skin, the same blue light that shone in Zyra's veins. The bunker went silent. Zyra stared at him, her voice almost reverent. It marked you, it recognized you. Recognized me, Daniel said. As what? Zyra looked at the crystal again. As its enemy or its heir. Daniel didn't understand, but the unease in her tone made him step back. We need to destroy it, he said. Zyra shook her head. We can't. If it's truly alive, destroying it could awaken the rest. The rest? She met his eyes. The Devourer was never one mind, it was many. That shard is a seed. Daniel exhaled slowly. So it's not over. No, Zyra said quietly. It never was. That night, Daniel stood outside the bunker, watching the dying fires across the wasteland. The wind was cold. The stars above were faint, some hidden, some gone. Zyra joined him silently, her steps soft against the sand. They don't trust you, he said without turning. They shouldn't, she replied. Trust must be earned. And what about me? He asked. Should I trust you? She looked at him for a long time. You already do. He smiled faintly. Maybe I do. Zyra's gaze turned toward the horizon. When the next storm comes, we fight again. But next time it won't be just for survival, it will be for what we become. Daniel followed her gaze, the horizon glowing faintly blue in the distance. Not sunrise, not fire, something else. He tightened his grip on his rifle. Then we'll be ready. Zyra nodded, together. The wind carried whispers that night, faint, distant, almost like voices from the stars. Daniel Cross stood on the bunker roof, staring at his arm where the glowing mark still pulsed softly under his skin. It hadn't faded. It hadn't stopped. It beat like a second heart. Below him, the survivors worked in silence. The city was gone, but the will to live wasn't. Human engineers rebuilt antennas from scrap metal. Varkari healers worked beside them, their strange hands glowing blue. For the first time in history, there was no army, only life rebuilding itself. But peace never stays long. Zyra found Daniel at dawn. Her armor was repaired, the marks of battle replaced with lines of new energy. She looked at him at the faint light beneath his skin, and her expression was unreadable. It's growing stronger, she said quietly. Daniel flexed his hand. It doesn't hurt, it just feels alive, like it's listening. Zyra frowned. It is. That shard linked itself to you. Maybe it saw what I saw, a human who refused to kneel. He looked up at her. You sound almost proud. I am, she said softly, then her tone darkened. But it also means something else. If the Devourer marked you, it can still find you. Daniel's smile faded. So it's calling for me. No, she whispered. It's calling through you. Before they could speak further, alarms blared inside the bunker. A young technician shouted, "Energy surge west perimeter." Daniel and Zyra ran outside. On the horizon, a column of light rose from the sand, black and blue, twisting like smoke. The ground trembled. From beneath the earth something emerged, not as massive as the Devourer's ship, but alive, growing. It was the Shard's echo, the last seed awakening. Zyra's voice dropped. "It's feeding on your link, on you." Daniel's breath caught. The mark on his arm blazed bright, glowing like a star. He could feel it pulling him toward the light, calling his name without words. He fell to one knee, gripping his chest. "It's in my head," he gasped. "It's showing me faces, millions of them." Zyra knelt beside him, her hand on his shoulder. "What do you see?" "Worlds it devoured, memories and something else." "It's not evil, Zyra, it's hungry, it consumes because it was born in darkness. It doesn't know any other way." Zyra stared at him. "Then teach it." He looked up at her, shocked. "What?" "You said humans fight for what they believe in. Show it something new, end it. Not with destruction, but with meaning." Daniel met her eyes, saw trust there, real trust, and nodded. "If I fail," Zyra smiled faintly, "then I'll finish what you start." He walked toward the column of light, each step heavier than the last. The air around him shimmered. The mark on his arm spread, blue veins crawling up his neck, his eyes glowing faintly. The world grew quiet. Even the wind stopped. Then in his mind a voice spoke, deep, endless, ancient. "You are not one of us. Why do you reach into our hunger?" Daniel closed his eyes. "Because you took everything from us, and I've seen what you fear most. Fear." The voice echoed, confused. "Yes," Daniel said, "you fear emptiness. You consume because you can't create. You destroy because you don't understand life." The light pulsed violently. The ground cracked. "We are survival. We are eternity." "Then learn what eternity feels like," Daniel whispered, "when it forgives you." He placed his hand on the rising shard. The world turned white. For one impossible second, every living thing on Earth, human, alien, animal, felt something vast pass through them. Not pain, not fire, understanding. The light spread across the desert, through the ruins, over the sea, into the sky. The Devourer's energy, once pure hunger, changed. The scream became a heartbeat. The darkness became still. Zyra shielded her eyes, calling out. "Daniel." When the light faded, the column was gone. The shard had turned to dust, drifting softly into the wind. Daniel stood in its place, silent, glowing faintly, and then collapsed. Zyra ran to him. His pulse was weak, but there, the mark on his skin had vanished. "You did it," she whispered, cradling his head. "You stopped it." He opened his eyes slowly. "Did we win?" Zyra smiled through the tears she didn't understand. "No, we lived, that's better." He laughed weakly. "Then it's your turn to rebuild the world." Zyra looked at the horizon, the first dawn of a new earth, golden and quiet. "Not just mine," she said. "Ours." Years later, children would tell stories of that day, of the man who touched the sky and taught a monster mercy, and of the alien who stood beside him when no one else would. They would call it the day of the last light, when humanity proved that sometimes the greatest weapon isn't power, it's compassion. If you enjoyed this journey, leave a like, share your thoughts below, and subscribe to become part of this story. This is born of two worlds where reality ends and imagination begins.